Hi everyone, this is Julianne Victoria of Through the Peacock's Eyes. Welcome to my channel. So this video is a Depth Year 2019 wrap-up or kind of little review of what I accomplished, what I did in my depth year, and diving deeper into 2020. So I'm continuing on with the depth year work, and I think I mentioned this in my very first depth year video about a year ago, that it's quite natural for me to want to dive deep into things, to simplify things so I can focus on things. And I jumped on the depth year bandwagon with a whole bunch of people who are doing it on YouTube and not on YouTube. Oh, and there's a Facebook group for the depth year, and I'll link that below if you're interested in being a part of it. I jumped on this bandwagon because you probably know I had a baby a couple years ago. It was a very difficult pregnancy. It was a traumatically difficult labor. There was lots of recovery, a lot of injuries, a lot of pain involved, all the while taking care of my infant. Of course, my husband's around, but he's gone 11 to 12 hours a day for work, and there's no family, no one to help out. So it was very difficult. And I jumped on the bandwagon last year, so my baby was 1 at the time, to help me refocus, to kind of get back to the depth that I normally would be at. And part of it was also to catch up on things I just did not have the energy to do when I was pregnant. I had lots of pregnancy related issues, so I did like nothing basically. Okay, so this year, 2020, I'm ready to dive deeper. I'm ready, I'm feeling. So it's been a couple of years, and it's only been in the last few months that I actually feel like my old self. So it's been a long, slow recovery. Healing takes longer when you don't get to stop and rest at all, when you're not getting enough sleep at all. And I'm just now feeling more like myself, and I want to be more structured, be more focused in all the things that I do, kind of be like my old self, like I was a few years ago. Okay, not that that was totally gone, but that's just my feeling here. So last year, I got better. A lot of my depth year videos were about time management, and that's still something I have to work on regularly with a 2-year-old. Sometimes there's no time, and sometimes you're like, oh, wow, I have an extra half hour. So I've gotten really good at structuring and restructuring every week, every month, every season, what and how I go about doing things, and that will continue on. But I'm able to, my 2-year-old can now, I can say, hey, let's do this together, and we'll do the same things, but doing our own thing. That's getting easier and easier. So I've really got good with the time management, and, not that I was, feeling great about it all the time. There's lots of periods of frustration, but I would just remember, okay, slow down. Let's rework the schedule. Let's figure out what I can accomplish when. But I also, in the last couple of years, I became like this super multitasker, which, one, that's great for accomplishing things, but two, it got to the point of end of 2019 that it was causing me more stress than feeding my creativity, it didn't feed my focus. And so I'm also adding in a word of the year. So Jessica Starr, the Story Witch, I'll try to remember to link her video to this down below. I think she got it from someone else. Maybe she came up with it. I can't remember. But she has a word of the year. And I thought, that's a great idea to focus, to meditate on a word. And my word is focus. And that just feels so right to multitasking work from home mom of a 2-year-old is a little crazy. But if I focus on focus in whatever I'm doing, whenever I can, again, with my time management adjustments every week or month or however often I have to do it, I feel I can accomplish much more. And it's not so much about, getting stuff done and checking things off the list, but I love to be very creative. And I have a lot of creative projects, writing projects. I have more deck projects. I have personal study I want to do. I have a whole list I'm going to go through here for my depth year video here. I wrote it out a little more structured than I did last year. And I laugh at that because Saturn's been transiting my first house, and he'll still be in my first house. This is Western astrology, for a while. Um, and that's just all the Saturnine energy, and Saturn conjoined Pluto. It's like very structured, very focused, very down to earth, very grounded. And that super duper mommy multitasking mode is not very grounded for me. It was at first, like, because it helped me to kind of get back into things. But towards the end of 2019, I just felt scattered. And so I don't like that feeling. I don't like that energy. And just to review, because it helps to review to realize, oh, I have been focusing, though I may not have been feeling like it. I have been, yeah, grounded enough and creative enough, though at times in the past year I may have been completely frustrated at the same time with a toddler running all over the place, and it's like, please sit still for 5 minutes. But just to review what I've accomplished, because I'm like, wow, I did do quite a bit. So last year I created, I love the back, the workbook for my Fine Lines deck, Traversing the Fine Lines. It's a monster. There's a lot of journal space, but there are prompts for all the fine lines. And if you've probably heard me say this, it wasn't my intention, but it's turned out to be quite a great deck and workbook for shadow work. And then I came out with my adorable children's tarot. And that, of course, comes with, a guidebook and coloring book. And then it also has just a plain coloring book version. I came out with that. But both of those were also old projects that I had wanted to complete a few years ago during my pregnancy that I had no energy to do. I came out with my Medieval Sigils deck. Hold that up a little bit better. So Sigilla Medievalia, the Medieval Sigils Tarot. That was a brand new idea creation this year. And then I just recently came out with the second edition of Shedding Light on Jyotisha, which was also an old project that I thought I would have, completed a few years ago. But now that I've done it, I realize I kind of needed a little more practice and experience doing readings to put it together the way it has been put together. So it's one of those things where you realize, when you're like, oh, I wish this was, I wanted to get this done a while ago. I can't find the time to get this done. And you work with these slowdowns. This is Saturnine energy. Saturn helped you focus. Saturn is discipline. I'm totally in a Saturn. Another Saturn depth here, going deeper. Again, as he conjoins Pluto, like next week. Pluto, god of the underworld. That I'm totally working with that energy. But it's one of those things, and then you do, and you're like, you know what? It was the right time. It was the perfect timing. Saturn, timing, depth, discipline, focus. So focus is my word of the year. And that plays through in all my things. I have a list of 10 things here to focus on for my depth year. So the first thing is tarot decks. So in this past year, I rehomed, a few I sold, like around 50 tarot decks. I've cleaned out my collection. I still bought some decks. It got a little out of hand around my birthday in August. But it did not get out of hand around Christmas. I think I got one new deck as a gift. So I wrote down here, for tarot, less decks, clear out a few more. And I've gotten more specific or more precise or even more picky, you can say, about what decks I like to use. And a lot of that has come through being a deck creator and really like getting in touch with what decks really vibe with me, what decks I really love to use, which ones I connect with. And I'm sure that will deepen in this year, depth year 2020. But less decks, that means buying even less decks. And I wrote down, did I write it down there? Maybe in my buying section. I'd like to limit it to one deck a quarter. So maybe 4 decks this year, and maybe one more, maybe even less. I know there's one deck I'm still waiting on. I've been waiting on it for a couple of years, and there's no other decks that are really on my radar. So I might try to just keep it to that one deck unless one really calls to me strongly. If I'm gifted decks, that's fine. But for my own accumulation of decks, I want to keep it very specific. I'm really enjoying working with certain like groupings and sets of decks for client readings and for myself. And I'm really getting to know them deeper. And I wrote down here, getting deeper into some decks and also combinations of decks. That's something that surprised me this past year of 2019, is working with combinations of decks and how powerful that can be. And then also wrote, deck study. So the diving deeper is part of it, the deck study. And one of the things I'm doing is following along with Jules at the channel Cosmic Spirit and Books. I'll try to remember to link her below too. She's going through the Tarot of the Spirit, which is a deck based on Kabbalah, which is one of the things I wanted to study more. I've read books here and there, but it hasn't been consistent enough where I'd say, oh yeah, to me, I have pretty high standards, where I would say I know Kabbalah. And that leads to my next point, number 2 for the depth year 2020. My studies. I'd like to study more in Kabbalah, so I'm doing that with the Tarot of the Spirit deck. And then I have some other books that have been waiting, and I'll get to my books. I'd like to relearn the runes, though I used runes, in my Medieval Sigils tarot. I find some runes popping up right away. Well, I won't shift through that for a long time, but I used them for one of the suits. And my very first deck that I bought, because I was gifted my first tarot deck, was a rune deck. And it got lost in a move probably like 15 plus years ago. So I've studied runes on and off. I have rune stones, but I really want to know it. Oh, and that reminds me, I didn't write that down here. Nina at Shuffle Tarot is going through the runes on her channel. Okay, another channel to link below. I'll try to remember that. And so that's going to help as well. And then I wrote down also, reviewing mythologies, studying some spiritual texts. I've studied a lot of mythology. My first college degree was in classics, so Greek and Roman and some Egyptian mythology was in there. I really studied the archaeology and languages, but the mythology is all part of that. And then, of course, with astrology and everything. But I haven't sat down and read and studied mythologies in a while. So there are some books I have that I want to reread and some that I have not yet read. So number 3, that leads to reading time. And I just wrote time ! That's going to be part of the time management. Mini me goes through phases where she loves to read her books and when she doesn't. So I need to be better at reading when she reads instead of doing the dishes, because I can do that when she's running around. That's really just a time management thing, because I've gone through spurts this past year where I've gotten a lot of reading done and surprised myself, and then go 2 months without reading more than a page. So I want that to be more consistent. That's part of my studies. That's part of everything else. And then number 4, books. I put buying no books. So last year I said was a low buy year. I'll still say that for this year, but it's an even lower buy year. I don't need any books. I have plenty of books actually on the shelf behind me that you can't see. I've read all those. There might be 1 or 2 in this cabinet here that I have not yet read or I've only referenced and looked at. So no buying books this year. I have plenty of books to read, plenty to work with, plenty to reread that I want to read. That's it. Okay. Number 5, so into the buying. Again, lower buy year. A tarot deck or oracle deck-ish a quarter. That's a good number. I'm going to try to be less than that. Maybe just that one deck I'm waiting on. Some will be coming in because there were some Kickstarters I supported this past year. But I'm going to keep that really low because I have plenty and I also want to clear some more out. No books. When it comes to other things, I'm not a huge shopper. It's usually things I need. So when I have a bag of clothes to donate, then it's like, okay, well, I can get, let's say I'm donating a bag, and it's mostly like shirts. Those get worn out the most. Then it's like, okay, I can get a couple more for everyday wear and so on. So I'm really good. I'm not a huge spender. I'm very conservative. I take really good care of my clothes as well as like my decks. Like things don't wear out very quickly for me, except maybe like the shirts or a sweater that I wear like all the time. Those clothes that you just kind of rotate through regularly. So the buying isn't that bad at all. It was just mostly the tarot before, and I have enough books now. But one thing, well, it's me and my husband, but it's mostly me. It's where we can cut spending is having my husband pick up dinner on the way home. That's his night to cook dinner because he doesn't cook. I want to limit that to once a week. Often it's twice, occasionally 3 times a week, like if it's a rough week or I'm not feeling well or there's just a whole bunch to go on. But I want to keep that to once a week. I'm going to get better at that. That would be my break from cooking dinner. And we can save, you save quite a bit of money by not picking up dinner and bringing it home a couple nights a week. So that's a spending area that we can definitely work on. And my husband actually started bringing his lunch to work a few months ago, not every day, but more days. So that's saving a lot of money too, especially because he changed jobs out last year and he works downtown and picking up lunch is much more expensive. So pretty good in that area. So number 6. Okay, so health-wise, so number 6 on my list for Depth Year 2020. I do get plenty of exercise. So I have 3 large dogs, so we walk regularly. And I try to run them 1 time a week, maybe 2 times a week if time's permitting. So yeah, and chasing Mini-Me around. So I get plenty of physical exercise. But one thing that I have gotten out of the habit of is stretching regularly, which is really important for me. And another health thing I want to accomplish this year is significantly cutting down or cutting out altogether coffee and caffeine consumption. It's not excessive, it's not bad. I usually have coffee or tea in the morning, but sometimes I'll have coffee or tea again in the afternoon if it's, a crazy busy day or I haven't gotten enough sleep because of Mini-Me. But it's more like I'm in the routine of it than I need that help to get through the day. So I want to, and I've already started this, significantly cut down or cut that out completely. I do love like a warm, cozy cup of coffee in the winter mornings, so I might do that through the winter. And then from then on, just, once or twice a week. And it's not that much, it's not excessive, but I don't like the way it makes me feel. It's really more the routine of it that I like. And I have plenty of herbal teas that I can drink instead. Yeah, and it makes me anxious. It makes me jumpy. And so especially when I've been in like super multitasking mode, it makes me more ungrounded and feeling more scattered. And it takes longer to recenter and ground. So that's something health-wise I also want to work with. And, that'll save a little bit of money. I'm not like going to a coffee shop and getting coffee all the time. So it's not super expensive, but it will still help out. Okay. And then, that leads into like spiritual practices. Part of that is yoga. Yes, there's the physical asana practice. But I want to get back into a very regular yoga routine. That was something that was on and off over the past couple of years because of physical pain and injuries and limitations. I couldn't do a whole lot. And then I'd be like, start to get back into it and something else would act up. And so it was just, the message was basically, take a rest from that. It's not the time. But I can also do the pranayama practice. So this year, I want to get into regular yoga, so the physical asana practice, but more importantly, the pranayama practice, the breathing practice, because that is something I used to do day in, day out. And I've just gotten out of the routine. Life has been hectic and crazy. There's just been a lot of healing going on. And it really, that is another thing that helps me stay centered, grounded, and focused. Because it's a focus practice on your breath, right? It's a meditation practice. And that, when I get centered and grounded and I have the breath working through me, in me, and with me, I can focus on other things much better. And when I can focus, I actually accomplish a lot more than trying to multitask and then end up getting scattered and ungrounded. So that's really important for my spiritual practices. Other spiritual practices, include tarot, the stuff I do already. And actually this past year, I'd been doing a lot of shamanic work on myself. So that's taken up a lot of my spiritual practice time, whatever time I can manage for that. And so I want that to shift a little bit. I might go into it, what I've been doing this past year. There were this 3 or 4 months or so where I was doing a lot of shamanic extraction, basically. And that has helped a lot of the healing I've been going through, because a lot of old stuff was triggered and brought up through my healing from my pregnancy and my labor and so on. And so that was a lot of my personal time and energy and spiritual practice time went into that this past year. So now it's like I have the space, I should have the time for more regular yoga and pranayama and meditation, like just meditation practice. Just looking at my notes here. And also kind of on the lines of health and sort of spiritual practice is a little more time to go on hikes with my dogs, to be out in nature more, and more time for my gardening, because that's actually a very spiritual practice for me. Being part of nature and part of the process of growth and growing your own food and some of your herbs for healing and so on. Okay. Next, number 8 on my list. This is a long video. I wrote creating. And I don't know if you watched any of the videos of that 24-hour New Beginning 2020. It was a hashtag New Beginning 2020 event, live event. And I was a part of it, and so was Ethany, if you know Ethany Dawn. She talked about, spiritual business. And one thing she said in there that rang so true for me that I need to focus on right now was, spending more time creating rather than consuming. Now, in reality, I've probably spent much more time creating than consuming. But in my mind and in those frustrated moments in the past year where it's like, I don't have time to get things done, or I'm like super multitasking and unfocused and scattered and ungrounded, that would I would in those moments, if it just seemed like, oh, this is just too scattered and I don't know what to do, I might just sit down and listen to or watch a video, listen to while I did something else or did more multitasking, right? But that's something I want to focus on, is more time creating than consuming. So that means not that I watch a whole lot, but watching less videos on YouTube, or, scanning through Facebook or Instagram as much. And a way I limit myself is I don't have huge lists that I follow. I just choose to go check on different people. That's just my own personal management there. But I can be better at it because I want to focus more on creating and what I put out there. And then when I have time, when I have some free space, when I need some downtime, to check out a video or read a post that I'm really drawn to and interested in. So if it seems like, if you're a YouTuber out there, I'm not around as much, don't take it personally. I'll be at your channel here and there. I just need to limit it a little bit more so I can focus. So I can focus on my word for the year, which is focus. And so I can feel more grounded and create, not necessarily more, but the phrase that's coming is create more, or feel I am creating more when I am creating rather than being so scattered. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And then I wrote down, my writing. I'd like to blog regularly. I've said that a couple times. over the past year or two, but I'd like to post on my blog at least monthly. Um, I used to be very, very active in the blog world. Um, it's been a few years, maybe 3 to 4 years since I was really posting regularly. So I want to get back to that. And then writing, which is part of the creative things. Last year, at the start of Depth Year 2019, I was like really working on my book on schizophrenia. Of course, mini me baby was only one then, and she would play in her playpen, and I could like get some typing done, and she napped longer. I could really get a lot of writing done. And then all of a sudden, like, the inspiration for it stopped. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I often have multiple projects. That's when I got, children's tarot out there. I worked on my other things. I got the Traversing the Fine Lines workbook out there. It was time, and then it wasn't time for that. So that's like one of the top things on my list. I have a couple of other decks in creation. My second children's fairy tale, which is something like I keep coming to and then I pull away and coming to. I will still just go with the flow, but I do feel like the schizophrenia book is high on that list. Okay. Number 9, decluttering things. And that's not something I think I thought about last year. I'd have to go back and watch my videos for Depth Year 2019. And I don't like to keep a lot of clutter anyway, because it's stagnant energy. But our garage, it clutters up, and then we clean some stuff out and clutters up, and my husband has a project on his shed that he's building, and it's like, I want to get that done, clear out space in the garage, have the gardening shed, have that done and organized, and all the gardening stuff there. So that helps with me having more time to garden, and if everything's in one spot and not in a big mess in the garage, that saves time. So decluttering the garage and creating creative space in there too, like that space to build things. Not that I have anything I want to build right now, but I would like to get chickens again, and before I had built my chicken coop by hand, and if that space is there, I might be more motivated to do it sooner than later, if we can do it in the yard we have with 3 large dogs. I'm not sure if that would work out. And lastly, on my Depth Year 2020, diving into focusing more in the year ahead, is other studies. So something I've wanted to get a certification in, or might be called something different depending on what school you do it through, is thanatology studies. And thanatology, technically it means study of death, but working with people who are terminally ill, working with people who are grieving. Not quite like a death doula. And I don't have the time for this right now with a 2-year-old, but it's something I've wanted to look into and study more in a more like structured school certification sort of way, and to see where it takes me. I've always been interested in it. It could be working with people who are grieving. It could also be working with spirits who have passed on, and I think it might be leading that way. So it would be sort of like mediumship. But it's something I want to explore further into, and we'll see where it might lead in the years ahead. Okay, so that is my 2019 Depth Year wrap up. Diving deeper into 2020, my word of the year is focus. And I wrote here, slowing down. That came up. Slowing down came up quite a bit in the live I did with Wasima of Ascension Waves channel, the Going to Grandmother's House, the Shamanic Circle. I'll link that on screen here too if you want to check it out. Slowing down, grounding more, centering more, getting less super mommy, work from home, multitasker. And through the focus, actually accomplishing more and creating more. So that's my goal. That's where I'm diving into in this Depth Year of 2020. Let me know in the comments below if you're doing the Depth Year, why you're doing the Depth Year. I'm interested to see what people's goals are. only watched a few videos here and there, of course. Yeah, so thank you for watching. I'm hoping everyone has had a wonderful start to 2020. There is a lot of good energy I feel coming, not just in the year ahead, but in the decade ahead. It's productive, it's creative, there's a strong sense of better community in many ways that I'm feeling. So yeah, let's dive into this new year and new decade together. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for liking. Share this with someone whom you think it might help, and I'll see you back here soon.